Prologue. The sky was just starting to glow in the east when BroMan rolled up deep, his army of cannibals crowding the mouth of the valley of Zubuz. In the distance, high-pitched wails of women echoed through the canyon, eerie as hell. This spot? Old as time. Back in the day, Ice Age days, glaciers ripped the land apart, cutting deep scars into the earth like some ancient war went down. Time did its thing, though. Wind, rain, and silence shaped the valley, leaving behind a graveyard of forgotten beasts, fossilized bones gleaming under the shifting light, telling stories only the dead knew. Now what was left? A tight strip of land, a battleground by design. On one side, mountains, steep and unforgiving. On the other, a forest so thick even daylight couldn't slide through. Between them, a kill zone. And right there at the east end, BroMan's people held their ground, silent, still, waiting on the signal to pounce. His mob lined up at the tight mouth of the valley, two loose formations deep, at least 1,000 strong. They came from every backwater corner of the land, a wild mix of cannibals and killers. Up north, that was the Quack clan, famous for shrunken heads and chants so deep they made weak men shake. Their voices carried for miles, sending chills through the air like death itself was speaking. In the middle, the Yak clan, rocking bright-ass, goofy pointy hats and painted-up faces, always arguing about dumb shit. These fools never shut up, but when it came to fighting, they got it done. And then, from way down south, the Wax clan, silent shadows creeping through the dark, faces smeared in ash and bone dust. You ain't hear 'em coming. By the time you did, it was too late. Different tribes, different styles, but three things tied these killers together. Their national flag, BroMan's tattered underwear bearing an image said to be a jackass. They all had a taste for human flesh. And they all rode for BroMan, the former ruler of a place called the United States. His first squad, a sorry bunch, half-naked, toothless, weak-ass rejects who wouldn't survive a real fight. They looked like modern-day journalists, the kind who stay talking but never throw hands. You know the type, overeducated weirdos, soft as baby powder, the same fools you saw back in school. They always had something to say, always held the strangest opinions, always dressed like they lost a bet. They stayed in the school paper, crying about bullies while doing freaky shit in the bathroom stalls. These, the same kind of dudes who ran the news industry, rocking degrees from so-called higher learning joints. Really just boot camps for nerds who all think alike. Outcasts. Runaways, kids who never fit in but always wanted to mess things up for the ones who did. That's what made up BroMan's first wave. And they ain't even know they was just cannon fodder. But some of them started feeling it, that cold, creeping fear. Whispers moved through the ranks, nervous glances flickered between them, their hands shook, voices cracked, but nobody dared say it out loud. 'Cause if they did, they might end up roasting on a spit before the fight even started. This weak-ass squad actually believed BroMan's hype. He told him they was gonna change the game, the same way they always tried to force they weird-ass beliefs on everybody else. He said their real weapon wasn't fists, wasn't clubs, wasn't blades. It was words. Yeah, words. Said they could talk their way out of anything, that if they just believed hard enough, their slick mouths would beat out the enemy's rocks and spears. And they ate that shit up. For once, they wasn't just soft-ass nobodies always crying about some tiny-ass problem. For once, they wasn't just the dudes who lost every fight and then wrote a sad poem about it. But what really sold them? BroMan's promise, that they wouldn't even have to fight. He told them straight up, the real warriors, his second squad of killers, would step in before they ever caught a fist. They just had one job, get the enemy riled up. Run their mouths, throw shade, talk mad shit, get 'em angry. And most of 'em, they actually believed him. Right behind the first rank of soft-ass loudmouths stood the real ones, the savages, the bone crushers, the fight now, talk never type. These weren't no skinny, overeducated weirdos. These were the brutal ones, the feral ones, dripping with violence. They ain't need no degrees, no fancy words. They spoke in fists, blades, and broken bones. Armed to the teeth, jagged bone axes, spears hardened in fire, hands calloused from splitting skulls. Draped in hides, trophies from hunts where they didn't just kill, they devoured. Faces covered in scars, each one a receipt from a fight they won. Eyes wild, filled with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. Some of them chewed on bones while they waited, growling like cornered wolves. Others sharpened their weapons, dead silent, letting the cold flint do the talking for them. Violence dripped off them like sweat. This was a different breed. Most looked like Hollywood actors, but with one massive, unbroken eyebrow running across their ape-like foreheads. Others looked like politicians and talking-head news anchors, most wearing pointy-ass hats. And some, they looked like men, but they wasn't. They was Amazons, she-beasts who resembled many of the she-beasts on lefty television shows like The View. These misbegotten creatures was born for breeding and killing, and BroMan, he knew it. He stood behind them, calm, collected, and cold as ice. This was his army, his cannibals, his hairballs. And from the way they was heaving, grunting, snorting, and straight-up farting in excitement, he knew they was ready to tear this battlefield apart. This was it. Today, if everything played out as planned, BroMan was about to run this whole damn prehistoric world. That was how much was riding on this fight. His army looked unstoppable, a mob too big to lose, but deep down, BroMan had a tiny bit of doubt. Not in his real killers. Nah, they was solid. But that first wave, that wall of soft-ass talkers, meant to weaken the enemy? Yeah. He wasn't sure they'd last long enough. They were supposed to tire out the enemy, make 'em swing first, burn up their energy. But what if they crumbled too fast? And this enemy, they was different. They ain't look like BroMan's people. They had round heads and furless bodies. They ain't slouch when they walked. They ain't have knuckles nearly dragging the ground. They didn't have the characteristic single eyebrow running from ear to ear. Because of this last point, BroMan's people called them no-brows. The no-brows camp sat across the valley from his mob, tucked in a narrow cut at the western end of the vale. And at BroMan's rear, his banner of tattered, nasty, filthy underwear flapped high, with a charcoal sketch of a male donkey, the jackass, waving proud. Ain't no way they was getting ambushed from behind. The ocean had their backs. But this battlefield is really a trap? For them? For him? If shit went sideways, if the mob got turned, overwhelmed, stomped out, there was nowhere to run. The only way out was through. Plenty of smarter Neanderthals had told BroMan to pick a better spot. Those same brighter minds? Yeah, they was now shaking in the front line right alongside the rest of the cannon fodder. BroMan ain't care. As long as he made it out, the rest of these fools, expendable. BroMan, self-proclaimed genius, undisputed king of bullshit, climbed up into what looked like a busted-ass lifeguard chair, overseeing his horde of savages like a god sitting on high. Normally, trumpets would blare his entrance, but since them instruments ain't exist in this world, his Amazons made do. Long, shrieking, ear-splitting wails filled the valley, a war cry so high-pitched it made heads ring. His Amazons, his most ruthless bitches, stood panting, hairy, sweating under the hot sun. They wore stinking animal skins, decked out in bone jewelry and straight-up human shit to keep evil spirits away. They wasn't just his scariest-looking warriors, they was his cheerleading squad. When they screamed, it was both a rallying cry and a warning to friends and enemies alike. Out on the western end of the valley, ruins of an ancient stone wall rose up. Nobody knew what it was built for, nobody cared. From his perch, BroMan's sharp little sparrow eyes spotted the enemy's banner fluttering in the wind. He stared at it with pure, unfiltered disrespect. The enemy's army? Small. Too damn small. They stood silent, grim-faced, tight like a crew that knew death was on the menu. BroMan wasn't impressed. He took their silence as fear. He believed they was shaking just by his mere presence. And why wouldn't they be? His mob outnumbered them, out-crazied them, out-ate them. BroMan's strategy, like everything else he thought up, was half-baked, university-fueled nonsense. A big-ass theory wrapped in ego. But in the end, it was simple as hell. Overwhelm, smash, devour. His fighters wasn't skilled warriors. They ain't no tactics, formations, or strategy. What they did know? How to brawl. How to swing a jagged-ass club with the strength of a lifetime spent braining animals, and people, alike. How to bludgeon a fool into paste? That was the plan. That was always the plan? Not finesse, not strategy. Just wave after wave of knuckle-dragging, bellowing brutes smashing their enemies into the dirt. Today's battle would decide it all. Who would come out on top of this world? Would it be BroMan's lowbrow savages, the ones who feasted on flesh and bathed in blood? Or would it be the tall, smooth-headed no-brows with their round skulls, proper posture, and no single eyebrow? One way or another, only one side was leaving this battlefield alive. Yeah, BroMan muttered to himself, eyes darting across the battlefield. This gun work. It has to work. He glanced down at his horde of jackasses, the sheer weight of their brainlessness giving him confidence. Numbers alone would crush the enemy. Had to. He grinned, lips peeling back to reveal crooked, yellowed teeth, looking every bit like the savage barbarian he had become. A man who had no finesse, no plan B, just an unshakable belief in overwhelming violence and raw stupidity. "All right," he growled, gripping the sides of his makeshift throne, "let's get this show on the road."